Tanner, tell us about this Purdue team. The last time they were out, they had a bit of a rough ride against Ohio State, but otherwise they've been in all these games. And, I got to credit them for going out there and scheduling, in some respects, tougher than anyone in the conference. No heavyweights, but every game, no FCS, no low group of five teams, one of the best group of fives in Fresno State, Virginia Tech, Syracuse. I still think they got ripped off at Syracuse last year, but they had to replay them this year and lose a fourth quarter game. So Hudson Card, new quarterback, new coach in Ryan Walters, of course, a complete transition from moving from a Jeff Brom, let's throw it all over the field, and losing all that offensive personnel that was so exceptional last year, Payne Durham, Charlie Jones, and Aiden O'Connell, to what you have now. Just your thoughts about how this is meshing at this point.
Yeah, well, from a record standpoint, I think it's about what every Purdue fan expected. I think I had them at 3-4 through 7 games instead of 2-5. So I think record-wise, pretty close. And outside of the Ohio State game, like you said, every other game they've basically been in for the most part. Wisconsin, well, Purdue hasn't beaten Wisconsin since 2003. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. But yeah, I think what surprises me is a lack of big playability from the offense. They brought in Graham Harrell, which is the first $1 million offensive coordinator Purdue's ever had. He came from West Virginia. Of course, he has the air raid background with playing for Mike Leach and all that. And getting Hudson Card and the transfer portal from Texas. He has a pretty accurate arm, a big arm. And like you mentioned, lost Payne Durham, lost Charlie Jones, Aiden O'Connell, 3 guys who got drafted in the NFL, so you knew you were losing a lot. But, after game 1, Deion Burks looked like he was going to be their big play guy, and while he leads the team with 5 receiving touchdowns and everybody else has either 1 or 0, Purdue hasn't really been able to have those explosive plays. Game in and game out, I think usually about their longest plays, 25 to 30 yards in the air. Of course, Devin Mockabee and Tyron Tracy are leading the ground attack, except Tracy got hurt against Iowa in the first half, had to miss the rest of that game, then sat out against Ohio State. I believe he will be back this weekend against Nebraska, but Mockabee's kind of picked up the slack when Tracy's been out. He had over 100 yards against Ohio State. That was the only positive Purdue had that game, becoming the first 100-yard rusher against Ohio State since last season. But the lack of offensive production has been a little concerning. Offensive line, I knew was going to be a struggle, and then factor in some injuries that they've had along the way. The depth's just not really there. That's my biggest concern against Nebraska. Nebraska's defensive line is really, really good. And then on the flip side, on the defense side of the ball, it's been kind of up and down. I know a lot of Purdue fans are frustrated thinking that Ryan Walters could adjust his system more to fit the personnel of the defense, but I'm kind of in the in the different camp to where let the coach and the defensive staff, who was so good at Illinois last year, run what they want to run, and in the long term, they'll get the guys to fit that system. So while you might go through some growing pains and some speed bumps this year, I think in the long run it'll be better for the program. But I've been happy with the pass rush from Purdue. Nick Scordon and Kydron Jenkins have been 2 bright spots, and then Dylan Thieneman, freshman safety, has been a real bright spot for Purdue. He's their leading tackler. I believe he leads in interceptions. If not leader, he's second on the team with 3, and he's probably making a good case for a freshman All-American for himself right now. So yeah, it's been kind of up and down season, but yet it's been still kind of enjoyable, even though it's 2-5, but this weekend's game's kind of their Super Bowl right now.
Yep. I guess I'll go ahead and ask a question. So you mentioned the defense. So just me looking over the numbers, right? I know the numbers don't tell the story, so that's going to be a question. But they're 82nd in pass yards allowed, 153.6 rush yards per game, which is 94th in total yards per game, and then almost 30 points per game allowed. But what would you say is like your overall assessment, like numbers aside, that is kind of like a strength of this defense? that we won't see through that? Because of course we look at the numbers and that's one thing, but what is your take on the defense and the identity of the defense and what we should look out for?
I think this defense, compared to the Jeff Brom defenses he had 6 years at Purdue, I think this defense is more disciplined than Jeff Brom teams had. Jeff Brom teams, they seem to get a lot of personal foul penalties on the defense side of the ball. We haven't seen that too much from this Ryan Walters defense. They seem to be more disciplined and fundamental at times, even though they have had struggles at tackling a couple different games. But they don't seem to give up too many huge plays in the air, and I think that's the system of having Thieneman so far back. I'm sure you guys have seen that he plays literally 20 yards off the ball back there usually, and that's by design so they don't get burnt because they're pretty thin back there in the defensive backfield. I mean, Marquise Wilson, one of their corners they got from Penn State from transfer portal, he's out for the season. So now Derek Rogers, a true freshman, kind of got thrown in the fire, and Marvin Harrison Jr. was his first challenge, and that went about as expected 2 weeks ago. But I think it's more just staying disciplined. Not, I mean, even though they've gave up a decent amount of points this year and yardage per game, they haven't really got burnt too many times on big pass plays, and just staying disciplined and not getting too many costly boneheaded penalties.
For sure.
Tell me about the pass rush. I mean, you guys ranked like 19th nationally, third in the Big Ten in sacks.
Yeah, Kydron Jenkins and Nick Scorden, who was formerly known as Nick Caraway, he changed his name in the offseason. Those two guys have been the spearheaded that. Kydron Jenkins, and I figured he was primed for a big year this year, but I think he's even exceeded a lot of Purdue fans' expectations so far. Those two guys are pretty relentless pass rushers off the edge. They don't get a ton of sacks from the linebacker position. Yanni Karloftis, the younger brother of George Karloftis, is starting to come into his own a little bit finally during his junior year. Hadn't played a whole lot due to injuries and just kind of being lost in the shuffle the last few years. He had a real good game against Illinois a couple weeks back. But really, it starts and ends with Scorden and Jenkins for the pass rush. Those guys have helped push those numbers up.
Yeah, he's got 5 sacks for Kendrick Jenkins, which is in 7 TFL is pretty respectable. And then
and at one point, I don't know where he is. I think he was leading the nation in hurries. I don't know where he stands anymore, but
yeah. This seems to be just looking at the breakdown. This seems to be a battle of teams who can't score in the red zone. Nebraska 72%, Purdue 69th,
yes.
And then also Nebraska allows 88% scoring in the red zone, 86 for Purdue. So. What do you think seems to be the problem in the red zone for y'all? Is it play calling? Is it, what seems to break down in the red zone that you think, and then defensively, what kind of seems to be the issue?
On offense, I think it's a little bit of play calling and lack of interior offensive linemen, or good interior offensive linemen, I should say. I know early on in the Ohio State game, I think it was in the first half at least, they got down to about the half-yard line and couldn't get it in, and it was driving fans nuts because, of course, fans in the goal line want to see you go I formation, but that's not how Graham Harrell likes to do it. He still likes to run out of the shotgun, even in those situations. But that's been a struggle all year long, and it just seems like, I don't know, I wish they would move Hudson Card out of the pocket a little more in the red zone. Maybe we see that this week. It sounds like, according to Ryan Walters, the bye week really helped him get back to full health. He was dinged up in the first quarter of the Illinois game and then played against Iowa and Ohio State at not 100%. But really, I think it's the play calling and interior offensive line there for red zone woes. As far as defense, I can't really pinpoint one thing, but they have a lot of break and bend and break there in the red zone. Whereas compared to some past years, they would bend a lot, but then they get pretty strong in the red zone and force a lot of field goals. But so I can't really pinpoint one thing there.
Something's got to give in this game, though. Something's got to give.
Something's got to give. I honestly, looking at it on paper, it might be the first to 24 points wins.
Yeah. Oh, good. Oh, man.
I know Nebraska's paying a lot of attention to the two backs. Mockbee tore up Nebraska last year, and from all accounts that Graham Harrell's, obviously it's the air raid offense, but he's got some tweaks to it there that really Purdue's been running the ball pretty well. out of that air raid offense. So,
Yeah, they have been. And Maccabee, like I said, the last 2 games he's had pretty strong performances. When Tyron Tracy went out with I believe it was a groin injury, because he's been a surprise for the Purdue offense, Tyron Tracy, because Jeff Brom used him more as a wide receiver instead of a running back last year, and he just didn't get in the mix a lot. And then he asked the staff in the spring if he could move to running back, so that was kind of his own idea. They let him roll with it, and they've been a nice 1-2 punch, along with Dylan Downing, who's been a decent third string back for them as well. So that has been a kind of a bright spot the last few weeks, is establishing the run game, getting that going out of the quote unquote air raid offense, which is a total different type of air raid than I think a lot of Purdue fans envisioned when they got Graham Harrell. But hey, each OC runs their air raids a little different. So, but yeah, hopefully Maccabee and Tracy can stay healthy in these last 5 games, because Purdue's gonna really need them to got to run the ball to win games. So.
Yep. And so you mentioned Tyron Tracy, but the big thing that I noticed was efficiency. It's almost 6 yards per carry with him. I believe with Huckabee it's almost 5. Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry, Maccabee. So what do you think has been the biggest catalyst to that? And then also, with Deion Burks, I believe Deion Burks, just looking at the numbers, I'm just going by that. Has he been the top? He's been the top receiver from what I saw at 15.5 yards per reception. So, what should we game plan for with both of those? With that, the way they're running the run game out of the air raid, and then kind of how does that open up Deion Burks?
Yeah, I want to comment on the fan comments here, or the viewer comments with Tanner Lee. Oh yeah, I remember when he transferred to Nebraska from Tulane, and then he ripped Purdue's heart out in a 1-point victory for Nebraska at Ross-Ade Stadium. I was at that game, and it was just weird hearing my name on the PA and announcements throughout the game. But very familiar with him. But going back to your question. One thing Maccabee struggled with early on in the season and kind of got him benched was ball security. He was putting the ball on the ground a lot the first few weeks. He seemed to have cleaned that up the last 3 or 4 games, which is good. But like you said, he and Tracy, between the two, are getting about 5 yards to 6 yards of a carry. And they're different running styles too. Tracy runs with a little more power, even though he can be speedy as well. And Maccabee's kind of, I think his nickname's Crazy Legs, because you never really know what direction he's going to go until he's already going in that direction. So 2 little different run styles there. And what was your other question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just how does that with Deion Burks, his
yes,
because it seems like he's 15.5 per reception is it's no small number. So how does that kind of open up, and what should the Nebraska defense kind of prepare for to kind of contain Deion Burks?
Well, it definitely wouldn't shock me if they even find different ways to get him the ball this week after having a bye week, because I know that was a complaint a lot of Purdue fans had, is there's been some games he's hardly been targeted, or some games he's kind of disappeared and only had 2 or 3 receptions, and you just can't have that as him being your number 1 wide receiver. I love for them to utilize him a little more and use him on some end arounds, or even throw him in the backfield once in a while, kind of like Purdue used to with Rondell Moore, and the Arizona Cardinals still do with Rondell Moore. Not comparing the guys at all, even though they both wore number 4 for Purdue. But yeah, that's the thing. If Nebraska can find a way to shut Burks down or make it tough for him to get open, on slants, make guys like TJ Sheffield and Abdur Rahman Yassin beat you, and Garrett Miller, a tight end that Purdue, and I know NFL scouts are real high on, and he's finally, I think, starting to get that knee healthy. Missed the first 2 games this year after being out all last year with the torn ACL. I think he's finally starting to round into form, and they need him now more than ever, because freshman Max Clare is out for the season. He hurt his leg against Illinois, and he was kind of a young bright spot that not too many Purdue fans expected to be a target this year. But so if Nebraska find a way to make it difficult on Burks, that's going to make it pretty easy on their defense, I think.
Tanner Lee is here, Boiler Breakdown Podcast. You can catch the Boiler Breakdown Podcast. You see the Twitter handle right there, and also Tanner Lee. Best way to find that, you can just look it up on any of the audio platforms, or I'm assuming, Tanner, that you post them on your Twitter feed. So we've got posted right there on the banner